What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on this 2018 Ford Focus RS. What we're going to be doing today is putting on the monotune lowering springs. So this car actually doesn't belong to me, it's a buddy of mine. So we're going to throw these coils on real quick and see how she rides, so stick around. Alright guys, now that we've got the car in the air, we're going to work on the front first, since that's the most difficult part. So the first thing we're probably going to do is remove the brake line here, the bolt that's holding the brake line in, remove the ABS sensor wire, disconnect this sway bar end link, and that should give us enough to push down on the knuckle here to separate the strut from the knuckle. There is a bolt back here, by the way, for the strut going into the knuckle, so we're going to have to remove that as well. Once we get that removed, we'll be able to push down, separate the strut, and then we'll work our way up here to the top, undo this cowl area so we can get to the bolt on the top for the strut, and then we'll be able to remove it and go to the spring compressor, remove the spring, and replace it. Alright, so let's get to it. Alright, so you can see now that I've removed that bolt from the bottom of the strut there that attaches it to the knuckle. So now what we're going to do is try to take this knuckle down to separate it. So there are a couple methods, techniques I used, because I did a lot of these on Hondas at the same setup. So what I normally do, alright, so like I said, I just wedged this little chisel in here, and you can see already that it's starting to fall down a little bit, so that may have given us just the right amount we need to. Alright guys, so just for safety, I took out the ABS sensor as well, which probably should have done in the beginning, but I was able to do it before we got too far into the process. I also took out the clip on the bottom of this brake line bracket here, just to give the brake line a little bit more flex. I noticed that it was kind of getting taut, so I just took that out. But after that, just stepped on the rotor here with my foot a little bit, pushed down, and she came right out. So now we can move on to the top. So up top, what we're going to want to do is start by removing these bolts here. Got some pop clips in the center. We're going to just tilt the top forward, unbolt the bottom metal piece to get that out of the way, and then that'll give us access to the strut bolts at the top. Alright, so now you can see I've taken out there's two of these bolts on each side, and they are, I believe, a T30. So two T30s on each side, and there's some pop clips in the center. So once that is finished, we can remove these little bent cover clips, I guess. And we're gonna remove this metal piece underneath, so that we can have access to these strut bolts. Alright guys, so this is the piece you want to remove here. We just had two bolts on each end. These guys here. So once you take those two bolts out, all you need to do is slide this piece off, because once you do, you'll see that you have your strut bolts available and available to you. So the next thing we're going to do before we remove the strut is we got to remove this wire here, which controls the electronic suspension, and the clip is right up here. So we're going to undo the clip, remove the plastic clips that lead up to it, and then make sure you leave enough slack or make sure it doesn't get caught on anything on the way down, so you don't damage this piece here. So once I get that finished, I'll show you what it looks like. Alright guys, so just like that, we've removed 3 bolts from the top. As you can see, plenty of space by just taking off that bottom piece like I said before. And be careful with the suspension, the electronic wire for the suspension. You see I fell out and laying down right here. So what we're going to do next is get the coil, the spring compressors on it, and take this thing apart so we can put it back in. Alright guys, so now that we have the strut out of the car, we can go ahead and grab our spring compressors. Have enough space that bolt isn't going to get stuck anywhere. So let's go ahead and flip these around. Just be careful with your electronic wire there for the sport suspension, electronic sport suspension adjustment. You don't want to damage this. Alright guys, so now that we have the spring compressor set up on the spring, we're just going to go ahead and use the impact here just to drive this down to compress the spring. And once the spring is compressed, we're going to be very careful and take this top nut off here without damaging this wire. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once I get that done, I'll show you guys the end result. Oh, also by the way, you can get these spring compressors from any Advanced Auto or Pep Boys. They usually rent them out to you. So in case you guys are wondering where you can grab one of these, that's how you can get it. So be right back. Alright, so now you can see I've got the spring compressed. You can see that it is no longer pushed up against the top there. You can see I can just also move the spring around. So that's how you know that you're ready to go ahead and try to remove this top piece here. Alright guys, so to get this off here without damaging your connector, because normally I would put an impact on my gun on there, blast that off, but since we can't do that, what I'm going to do is we're going to use our wrench here. We're going to go through the connector on it there, and then you see here I've threaded back on one of these strut bolts, and you can use that with your ratchet to hold onto to break free. So we're going to give that a shot here. Alright, so you can, once I threaded that in all the way tight, put a wrench on there, I was able to very easily loosen up this top hat. So I'm going to take this off and we'll see what's under there. So make sure we put everything back on the correct way. Once I get that off, I'll come back and we'll put the spring on. Alright, so here we go. I've got the nut removed. We're going to pull this top hat off. Careful, because remember we have this wire here in the way. Just slide the whole thing out. Be careful with that sensor. Move this to the side. Alright, and then we can pull this piece out. Looks like there's not too much to worry about with this piece. It's all, you know, it's not coming apart at all, so that's good. So we'll set that aside as well. And then let me go grab the new spring and we'll put the new compressor out. So here's a quick side-by-side comparison. The Mountune spring on the left, the factory on the right. So you can see there's a bit of a difference there. But we'll see once the car's actually lowered down. My buddy actually uses this car for autocrossing. He just wants a little bit better suspension feel, so I'm just going to swap out the springs for now, and he might swap out the struts later. But yeah, this is a quick side-by-side comparison, so let's get this new spring on. Alright, so before you put the new spring back on, you're gonna have this little rubber piece down here at the bottom. If it did come off with the spring, then to put it back on, just there's actually a little rubber piece that sticks out, and then we'll go through this hole to keep it back on. And then this piece right here, this part right here is where you want the end of the coil spring right there. You want that to meet up and sit nicely in there. So once I get it in there, I'll show you guys what I mean. So this is how it should look sitting in there. You see how the end of the coil spring is sitting right up against the end of that rubber piece there. And on the back side, you have the rubber piece sticking through to keep the whole thing in place. So, yep, let me get the rest of this strap back together and we'll throw it in the car. Alright, so here it is with the Mountoon spring all assembled. Let's see, we got the end of our coil spring still sitting down there. Got the Mountoon spring on. Top all tightened down. Ready to go back in the car. So we'll get to installing this in the car and then we'll get to the back side. Okay, so the steps are just gonna be reversed. I've already started it. I've got the strap back in there. I've not yet tightened all the bolts down though, or anything in here really yet. So we just wanna carefully guide that electronic cable up through the top without damaging it. So here it is right here, and we'll connect that in a second. And then down here at the bottom, just make sure you slide this all the way down to where it was before, and you can start threading in that bolt. Reverse the process. We'll get this side done. I'll show you guys how it looks, and then we'll move on to the back. And there it is, all finished. This is the passenger side all done now. We've got our spring installed, everything connected back, which was the end link, the brake line, and the little clip on the brake line to give us some slack. We put our ABS sensor back in. We tightened down the bolt for the strut. On the top, we have reconnected our 3 strut mount bolts, which are 13 millimeter, and reconnected our connector right here for the electronic suspension. So I'm gonna do the driver's side off camera, and then once I get that done, we'll move on to the back, so stay tuned. Alright guys, so we just got done doing both front sides, right? So just give you a quick look at the driver's side. This is the side I did off camera, but you know, same thing. We had the end link, the brake line, and I still took this off to give the brake a little bit more slack. We removed the bolt here for the strut, and then we put the wedge back here, and we dropped the knuckle down, came up top, undid the 3 strut mount bolts. The electrical connector for the suspension on this one is back here, right there, and you're gonna have to disconnect from these little clips as well. But yeah, that's the front done on both sides. So now we're gonna focus on the rear. The rear should be a little bit easier. Essentially, you're gonna have the bolt here, right here. You're gonna have to undo that bolt. But before you undo that bolt, you want to put a jack right under here, okay? Because the spring is here. We're gonna undo this bolt. It should allow this arm to swing down. We're gonna grab that spring out and put the new one in. But that's at least how I think it's gonna go. But I'll go step by step, and as soon as I get the jack under here and start getting this bolt out, I'll keep you guys updated on the progress on the rear. So stick around. All right, so like I just explained, we've got the jack under here now. We're gonna go ahead and put this 15 mil on here. I'm just gonna loosen that up. And then as soon as I take that out, I'll get back to you guys and we'll take a look how the spring comes down. All right guys, so I've got the bolt out. We're gonna let this jack down slowly, and we're gonna see if we got it correct. So, slowly let the jack down. that's what I thought. So yeah, we just let it down. Use the pry bar to help it out a little bit. Let the jack down a little bit further. And there you see, this part is fully down. We should be able to, yep, take the spring right out of here. This is why the rear is so much easier. Alright, so as you can see, we got the spring out there. Let me grab the monotune spring and we'll compare them. Alright guys, so here is the factory coil on the left and the monotune coil on the right. I mean, you can see the coils are a little bit closer together and a little bit shorter on the monocoil, so or monotune. So we'll throw that on there real quick. Should be fast, and then I'll do the other side off the video, and then we'll lower it down and see how it looks. So stay tuned for that. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and raise the jack with the coil in there, and hopefully we can. So now we've got it in there. Whew. Just a little difficult lining up the bolts, the bolt hole I mean. Now we can just tighten it down. It's the best part about cars that have this kind of setup on the back, is they're just very easy to work on. All right, now just lower the jack. That is it, guys. So with that, we've got the rear spring installed, and all it took was removing that bolt, and we're good to go. So let me finish off by doing the other side, and then I'll lower the car down and we'll see how it looks. And there you have it, guys. It's all done. It did lower it a little bit, not too much, but I mean, this car is mainly used, like I said, for autocross and track day, so you don't want it to be too low. I feel like the front wheel gap is pretty good now, and the rear is it's still a little high, but I mean, still very functional. A little bit lower than it was from the factory. But hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any questions, you can leave it down in the comments. And until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.